Happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you being here with me every Thursday to go live and discuss all of the things real estate and Georgia. So dive straight in. I would love to hear where you guys are tuning in from. Drop a comment if you have questions, things you want to go over, things you saw in the media this week that just don't make sense and you want to talk about it. Definitely drop it in the chat. Would love to make sure that I'm going over all of that. That's why we're here every Thursday live at 7 o'clock to make sure that we are breaking down the news because, as I've always said, the news media is usually here to terrify, not clarify. So that's what I'm here for. A couple of things on the docket for today, specifically in Georgia. So one of the new things that are on the ballot, but only for certain people in the state of Georgia, is the city of Mulberry. And will this actually pass? So one of the things that has been up in the air is the city of Mulberry kind of breaking off and doing its own thing. Right now, this area is part of kind of like the Hamilton Mill area. If you live in that specific area, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And this actually came about because there's been a lot of growth in that area. They just finished building a new high school. There's been a lot of things that have gone on there. And a roughly 700 unit apartment complex was kind of thrown in by a developer wanting to, develop this land that was right at the corner of a very busy intersection. And so this would bring, roughly 700 to 1,400 more people, more cars, more students going into the schools. And a lot of people were completely opposed of it, said, we don't want to have that here. We've got enough traffic here. It's just not a great location. However, I will say that people have been coming out of the woodworks. This is definitely not something where it's like strong one side or the other. The comments in this article from different people, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times I show up for the comments, not what's actually being said, especially on Instagram. But the comments coming from these people about if we should have the city of Mulberry, kind of do its own thing, or if we should just keep it as it is, was very going back and forth. And then I don't know if you're familiar with the area of Peachtree Corners. A few years ago, Peachtree Corners broke off from Johns Creek and did its own thing. And so a lot of people are saying that this is going to be similar to that. The people that are opposed to it are saying that the millage rate is going to be capped. The taxes are not going to be as good. We don't really know what that looks like 100% yet. So it is on the ballot. People are going to vote. And I guess we will see if we have a new town called Mulberry, although it continues to trip me up and I want to call it Mayberry. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Andy Griffith Show, but I grew up with my mom watching it. And so it always kind of trips me up and makes me think of that. So if you live in the area, I would love to hear your comments. If you're pro Mulberry or if you're con Mulberry, I would love to hear your thoughts. I will reserve mine until we see what happens, and then we'll go from there. So good information to just kind of know about. The next thing, this is a big one, you guys, because this comes up all the time. The Fed. We did not reduce rates. I can't say that I'm surprised at all. We've talked about on this show for quite a while, probably since the beginning of the year, that I didn't think that this was going to happen. I will say towards the first of the year, I did think that maybe third quarter, fourth quarter, we might see it. Right now, I'll be surprised if we see it at all this year. But the Fed came, they said basically yesterday that it held its ground on interest rates, again, deciding not to cut as it continues a battle with inflation that's grown more difficult lately. Federal funds rate has been between 5.25 and 5.50 since July 23rd. Now, please do not confuse that with the interest rate because that is definitely not the same thing. So it said Jerome Powell, who is the chair of the Fed, during the news conference following the decision, expanded on the idea that prices are still rising too quickly. I don't think any of us will disagree with that. Inflation is still too high. You're not telling anybody anything. Further progress in bringing it down is not assured, and the path forward is uncertain. However, there was a little bit of good news because in this also, he said, however, investors were pleased by Powell's comment that Fed's next move was unlikely to be a rate hike. He also stressed the need for the committee to make its decisions meeting by meeting. So that's a fantastic thing. I will take no rate hikes. Obviously, we would love to see a little bit of rates coming down, but I will definitely take holding still and not continuing to see another rate hike. I think people are kind of at a point where they just can't handle much more of the rate hikes at this time. So hopefully we will start to see a little bit of inflation getting in line. The jobs report actually came out positive, which unfortunately for interest rates is a negative. But it means that people have jobs, and that can't be a bad thing, you guys. So Betty, I love that show. That's fantastic. I do too. I think you're talking about Andy Griffith that I was referencing a few minutes ago. It is a great show, wholesome. Let's see. I live in Decula. I am so happy that apartments and multifamily are not allowed. I appreciate you commenting. There's definitely pros and cons to both. I will say that a lot of the cities that were mostly single family for a long time have seen a lot of growth in the urbanizing, if you will. They're doing these micro cities, bringing in a lot more of the multifamily. So I can definitely understand, both sides of things, and we'll definitely see what happens with the city of Mulberry. But I think it's going to be, a good thing. So moving on. So today, this is kind of what we're looking at as far as inflation. So it's inching up slightly. Now, obviously, if you look over history, it's not near as high as it was, earlier last year, and then in 2022, and it kind of hit like its peak there at about 9. So we came really close, back in 2023 to coming down to where the Fed wanted to be, which is that target of 2%. Jerome Powell's been preaching about that. God, I feel like the last 2 years he's been preaching about that. We have not hit that target yet. And believe me, I would love to be there because groceries are incredibly expensive. However, we went up a little bit, but you can see kind of the last, few months since the beginning of the year, we've been going up and down, up and down. But the last couple of months, April and May, we have trended upward. And as of today, we're at 3.5. So the good news is we're not terribly far off, but we're not exactly where they want to be either. And Chairman Powell definitely is going to do what he wants to do at all costs. And he made that very clear for the last year that he will get it to 2% come hell or high water. So I think we're just going to have to sit tight and pray that things come back down a little bit. So a lot of people have been talking to me and asking me questions about the lawsuit when it comes to the buyer brokerage agreements and just the buyer lawsuit altogether, that you've probably heard of. If you haven't, you've been under a rock somewhere. The way the media is spinning it is still making me laugh and giggle, just because here in the state of Georgia, a lot of what is being stated in the lawsuit, we're already doing. I know every state is different, but the latest to this all is that Zillow is getting into buyer brokerage agreements, which this again made me laugh a little bit, because I'm sure that you probably know all real estate agents have a love-hate relationship with Zillow. I love Zillow's website. There is probably not a website that you're going to find better to search for homes. They spend millions and millions and millions of dollars a year pouring into that website so that it is a very user-friendly website. It is easy for you to go on and search for different things. You can search by school district, you can search by zip code, you can search by city. So I love Zillow's website. I hate Zillow's Zestimate, because a lot of times it's either incredibly high or it's incredibly, incredibly low. We had a client one time, we sold their home for about $700,000. The Zestimate was $400,000. So grossly off. And I feel like it just doesn't do a great job of educating the public. So with that being said, Zillow has decided that with the lawsuit being in place, go figure, that they're going to roll out buyer brokerage agreements. Well, here's the thing, guys. In the state of Georgia, and that's where I'm licensed, so that's all I'm going to reference today. I know in other states it's different. You don't have to have a buyer brokerage agreement, but here in the state of Georgia, if I am writing a contract with you and we are going to be moving forward on writing that contract, I have to have a buyer brokerage agreement signed by both you and me. And basically what that agreement is stating is you understand that I am working for you. I am getting a commission off of either you or the seller. It's definitely going to state in there things differently in July. However, it has always stated for the longest of time since buyer brokerage agreements came around in the 80s that I am working for you. I am doing a job for you. I am, basically a consultant. I'm helping you look for homes. I'm educating you. I'm opening doors for you. It states everything that we're doing together and that you trust me to write offers on your behalf. In the state of Georgia, we've always had to have this. So again, I don't know other states. Some of them I know you haven't had to have that. But in Georgia, we always have. So really, nothing's changing in that form. So Zillow has decided to roll out, because let's take a look what they had to say. Under the terms of the National Association of Realtors Settlement Agreement, agents will have to have a written agreement with a client in order to work with them as a buyer broker. On Tuesday, Zillow announced that it will be offering a non-exclusive contract for buyers and agents to use for home tours ahead of the rule changes being implemented in July. So basically, what does this really mean? What does this translate as? Well, as of July, all states, I don't care what state you're in, are going to have buyer brokerage agreements for me to even allow you to go into a house. If I am opening a door for you and I am potentially representing you as a client, I will have to have this buyer brokerage agreement. I already always have. Zillow, on the other hand, has not. And so if you were in the state of Georgia and maybe you drove by a home and it had a Zillow sign in front of it and you were like, hey, let me look this up. Or even if it didn't have a sign and you looked it up and Zillow pops up, this is where I think things get a little bit confusing for the general public. So if you take your phone right now and you go to Zillow.com, or if you even just Google a house number that you know is for sale, 123 Banana Street, and that home pops up, probably the first thing that's going to pop up, the first website is going to be Zillow. Why? Well, because Zillow has really deep pockets and they pay Google a lot of money to make sure that they're at the top. And so if you click on that, you'll see 123 Banana Street. You'll see its pictures. You'll see all of the information about the house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, great school districts, blah, 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 blah. And then at the bottom or on the side, sometimes it will say like contact an agent, or it'll have a couple of agents, there. I feel like a lot of people get confused thinking that this is the listing agent that's associated with that house. You're not calling the listing agent. You're calling a random agent that is paying Zillow for leads. And so when you call that agent, their hope is that they're now able to talk to you and get you talking enough so that they're able to convince you to meet them at the house and show you and win you over as a client. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but what I am trying to clarify is you need to be making sure that you understand, are you trying to reach the listing agent to ask questions about that specific home? Or are you just wanting a random agent to open the door for you so that you can see it and then take conversations from there? So make sure that you're clear on that first, because that's a big confusion. I've heard so many people say, well, I thought I was getting the listing agents. I had some questions about the yard, or I had some questions about the house. I wanted the disclosures. Well, you're not going to get that with the random agent that you're seeing on the side. So make sure you're clear. So this is really interesting to me. What Zillow is basically trying to do is, instead of when you sign an agreement with me for a buyer brokerage agreement, usually we're already working Together, we've had a buyer consultation. You've told me what you're looking for. I'm actively working for you, looking for houses, sending you houses, scheduling, showing, scheduling inspections, scheduling all of these different things, right? Well, with Zillow, you're basically signing a buyer brokerage agreement that is good for that specific home. So it's not going to associate you and I long term. It's basically just giving them coverage from the, during the, when the lawsuit comes in kind of to play in July. If you go into a home, a Zillow agent is going to make you sign this agreement, but you're only tied to them for that house. You're not tied to them for like the length of time. And I also just want to be clear, because this is something I feel like a lot of people don't understand about listings or buyers. Either way, if you sign an agreement, a listing agreement or a buyer brokerage agreement with any agent, whether it's me or whether it's anybody else, that agreement, that contract between you and I, you can fire me at any time. And I can also fire you at any time. If we down the road, we've been working together for a couple of months and you just don't feel like I'm doing a good job, you don't feel like I have your best interests at heart, you can't, reach me and I'm not showing up, or vice versa, I feel like you're just not being realistic. I feel like we've made offer after offer after offer and you're just not hearing the information that I am trying to educate you on. We have the ability to fire each other at any point. So yes, because you signed a buyer brokerage agreement, you are bound to that agent while that agreement is in play. However, should you ever feel like an agent is not representing you, whether you are the seller or whether you are the buyer, all you have to do is send in writing a termination. That's all you have to do. And then there's documentation that the agent can draw up to basically release each of you from the contract. So please don't ever feel like you're stuck. If you don't like the agent you're working with, even if it's me, but it won't ever be because I wouldn't do that to you. But even if it was, I want you to say, hey, this just isn't working out. Because sometimes you start working with somebody and you realize, look, we're just not vibing. We're just not there. And that's okay. Like I'm not for everybody and I'm well aware of that. And if I'm not for you, then just say that and, vice versa. So good things to think about, good things to know, because you might find yourself in that situation sometimes. Anthony, so if I'm on Zillow and I find 6 homes that I like and press the button for an agent, does that mean I'll see a different agent at every home? That's a great question. So basically, if you're on Zillow and you push an agent, they're only going to get notified about the specific home that you were looking at, that you, like if you were looking on there and it said, my name, but it wouldn't because I don't pay for those ads. But if it did, it would tell me Anthony Banks is looking at this particular home, 123 Banana Street. It would not tell me that you're interested in any of these other properties. Hopefully my job, as I'm calling you and saying, hey, Anthony, I see that you're looking at 123 Banana Street. Are there any other properties that you would be interested in? That's your opportunity to say, well, actually, yes, there's these other 5 properties. So that's the only way that you would know, because if you go on each one, it's going to start to show you different agents on each page, because every time you refresh the page, new agents that are paying for ads with Zillow are going to show up on those pages. That's how those agents, potentially get leads from Zillow. And the whole reason that they pay for or pay Zillow to be a premier agent is their hope is that they're getting leads that are clicking on the property. The only thing that I wish, again, like I said, it clarified better, is it said somewhere like, this is not the agent of this property. This is a potential agent that is going to reach out to you about this property, about seeing it, but they don't have this listing. So I hope that clarified. So if not, let me know and I'll dive a little deeper. So a lot of people after the live last week kind of asked me different questions about foreclosures and why we're not seeing more and why I'm not fearful about that. And I found this article this week and I kind of wanted to go over it with you guys because I found it really really interesting. So this article, it talked about homeownership, and basically from 2012 to 2022, there's great news for America's homeowners. A growing percentage now own their homes outright, no mortgage, no liens, nada. So between 2012 and 2022, about 5% points to just shy of 40% of people own their home outright. So if you think about, almost 40% of Americans own their home outright. No mortgage, no nothing. And so that's a pretty big number if you ask me. Almost, we're getting close to that 50% mark. So that's not exactly great for lenders because they're not getting a ton of money back, but that's fantastic for homeowners. And a lot of these people have owned their home for quite some time. So it said the nationwide housing market has likely worked in your favor over the last, 10, 20, 30 years, however long you've been in your home. The data from the Federal Housing Finance Agency shows that in the 15 years between December 2008 and December 2013, home prices have basically doubled since that time frame to now. So if you bought your home for, let's just say, $500,000 in 2008, your home could potentially be worth close to $1 million. And so in the state of Georgia, we have not really seen quite that jump. I know in certain states they have. In the state of Georgia, we have not seen quite that jump unless you were one of the ones that was able to take advantage of the Great Recession, buy a foreclosure, and then obviously over time that probably gained a ton of equity back, and you might be at that complete double. I can tell you that my personal home here in Gwinnett County has gained substantial growth since we first bought our home back in 2012. And now we basically have doubled that price. So my home is definitely not worth $1 million, but I also didn't pay $500,000 for it in 2012. We definitely have a ton of equity in our home. So a lot of these people, though, are heading for retirement. And the thing that excites me about this is you guys hear me talk about and preach about on here all the time that homes are your greatest investment. And this article just goes even further to prove my point as to why I feel like home ownership is so important. Whether you feel like it's the American dream or you feel like it's something that you want to do, in my personal opinion, yes, I'm a real estate agent, but I'm not trying to sell you on this. To me, the numbers just make sense. If you are able to eventually pay off your home, and here's the thing, a lot of people say, oh, well, I'll never pay off my home. Most likely you will. Let's say that you're 30 years old when you buy your first home. If you stayed in that home long term and didn't ever move, you would have that home paid off by the time you're 60. You're not dead yet. That's very realistic. If you bought it even earlier, I think my husband and I started our homeownership journey when we were 28. So if we had stayed in that house long term, we would have paid that house off, within the next 15 to 20 years, because we make additional payments here and there, which is something that I'm going to go over in just a little bit. But some of the things that you have to consider here are, let's just take a look. In simplest terms, take a $2,500 mortgage. And this is where it goes back to the biggest benefit for me, if you own the home outright, is when you go on Social Security. If you take a $2,500 mortgage payment out of the picture, you've just reduced your annual expenses by about $30,000. Now factor that against the amount of money you'll need to manage retirement, between 55 to 80% of your current annual income. So they're looking at this and saying, if you're going on Social Security when you get into retirement, you have less monthly expenses that you're now responsible for. If you need to go into an assisted living at some point, you own your home outright. You have the ability to sell your home and to take all of that money, put it into the bank, and then you can use that money to, potentially pay for assisted living or pay for if you need healthcare when you get older. So this is one of those things that I just try and preach about because I do think that everybody is going to end up in that boat at some time. Now, everybody's different. It says here, in some, you've paid off that $500,000 home. You swap for a lovely $400,000 home. So this is talking about downsizing, right? If you weren't going into an assisted living, but maybe the kids are gone off to college, you're thinking about downsizing, you can sell your home, move into a home that's a little bit more affordable. You're selling excess furniture, downsizing. The math is populated by encouraging numbers. A $600,000 gain from the sale, $2,500 less in monthly expenses. So now you have a home that's still paid off because you sold your more expensive home, bought a cheaper one, and then you still put money in the bank to have. Now, where I have a little bit of problem with this specific article is I feel like they are saying that it's always easy to get a more affordable home. You and I both know with the market that we're in, that's just not the case. So obviously interest rates are no longer in play with this because if you own your home outright, hopefully you're just taking the proceeds from that and putting it on another one, and you're not taking out a loan to where the interest rate would even be an issue. However, there are many, many times, and this is why we're in the boat of the boomers not selling. It just doesn't make sense in a lot of times because if they have been in this home for, let's say, 30 years, they've paid it off, or they've been living, mortgage free for quite a while now, and they were to turn around, try and sell that house for, let's say, 700,000, and they were thinking, you know what, I'm going to go into one of those really nice 55 plus communities because y'all, if they would let me, I would live in one of those tomorrow because they are amazing. Like absolutely amazing. The amenities that they have there, a full gym. They've got, kayaks that you can do. They've got walking trails, pickleball, tennis. And these people are more active than I am. It blows my mind. However, my point being, while all of the amenities are absolutely amazing and the homes there are just fantastic, they utilize every square inch of those homes. They've got more closet space, storage space. However, they're expensive. They're really, really expensive. So if I were 63 years old and I have a home that's paid off and it's on an acre of land and it's 3,000 square feet because I've raised my kids here. Now my grandkids have come through, and you know what? I'm kind of done. I want to sell it and I'm going to downsize. And I'm looking at one of those 55 plus communities because they're really great. And Ashley said I should go check them out. They're just as expensive as my 3,000 square foot home on an acre. And I can see my neighbor. And while my home is gorgeous and new and has all of the bells and whistles, and I can walk right out to the gym, it's hard for me to swallow giving up 3,000 square feet on an acre for the same exact price as a 2,000 square foot home on like 0.23 of an acre, right? So I will say that the 55 plus communities are not for everybody. I have a client right now that just came up from Florida. They were looking at some different ones because they were really thinking 55 plus was going to be the way to go. And when they went and looked at the prices, they were like, it just doesn't make sense. I can get a small ranch in just a traditional neighborhood for $400,000 to $500,000. I don't need to pay for all of these amenities. I'm not going to use them. So while the article has a lot of great facts, and I do 100% back the fact that I think homeownership is still going to be the leverage we need when we get to that retirement age to be able to downsize, to be able to do assisted living, to be able to have retirement options that we can actually afford and still live on, because don't get me started on Social Security. The options that are always available when we're looking at downsizing don't always compare, equally, if that makes sense to you guys. So that being said, let's move on. So one of the things here, I'm not planning to make a 20% down payment on a home purchase, and here's why. You guys, this is one of the things that I've talked about for so long. And I think, unfortunately, because I've been in the business a really long time, this is my 19th year in real estate, I think sometimes I get a little bit blind, if you will. I know so many of the different options that you have when you're looking at buying a home. And so it blows my mind sometimes when people are like, well, I just don't have 20% to put down yet. I'm still saving. And I say, well, you don't have to have 20%. You can put sometimes as little as 3%, or there's even some loans that's 0%. And they're shocked. They're taken aback at the fact that you don't have to have a 20% down payment. Sometimes, even if you have the 20%, I don't think it's the right thing to do. So a common piece of advice you'll encounter if you're learning about how to buy a house is to make a down payment of 20% of the home's purchase price. And a mortgage lender is probably definitely going to tell you this because you're putting in cash to play. You're basically putting skin in the game, if you will. And depending on the type of mortgage loan you're getting, you might have to pay a form of mortgage insurance if you're not putting down 20%. That's really the biggest benefit to putting 20% down, is it now puts you enough skin in the game that the private mortgage insurance, the lender, is saying, okay, you have enough money put down on the home. You're probably not going to just walk away from it. You're probably not going to just stop making your payments, because you've put a pretty good chunk of money down on this house, 20%, right? If you were to stop making payments tomorrow and get foreclosed on, you've now lost quite a bit of money. So because you've put skin in the game, you've put 20% down, they don't charge you private mortgage insurance. Private mortgage insurance is when you've put 20% or 19% or less down, because basically you don't have enough skin in the game yet. They're thinking, if you only put 3% of this home price down on the house, you may in a couple of months just say, you know what, it's not worth it. I'm going to walk away. I only put down $15,000 anyways. I'm going to walk away. The bank can have it. But if you put down $150,000 compared to $15,000, well, that's a lot more for you to lose. So chances are you're not going to do that. So basically they're saying with this, why would you put down 20% when you could put down 3% if the only thing that is beneficial here is the fact that you are getting that private mortgage insurance taken off? Well, maybe you have other costs to cover. The down payment is going to be the single largest outlay of money, but there are also other expenses. During the process, you're going to have to pay for the home inspection, which runs you roughly $500 to $600. You're going to have closing costs, which are going to run you usually 2 to 3% of the cost of the home. And then possibly other expenses like the appraisal, which is going to run between $500 and $600 usually. And then you have to be really realistic and think about the fact that with home ownership, you're not renting an apartment, you're not renting a townhome where you have a landlord that's going to come and fix the home for you. If the AC goes out, it's on you to fix. If it needs complete, repair or replace, you're looking at an $8,000 to $10,000 bill. If the heating goes out, same thing. If the roof is leaking, same thing. Yes, you have insurance, but insurance is only going to cover certain things. If the AC goes out, it's not covering it. So these are things that you need to think about. And so I always say, if you're buying a home and you've saved and saved and saved, but if you put 20% down plus paying for your closing costs, now your savings is wiped out. You have nothing left in your savings. It's not a good idea. 20% is stupid. Don't do the 20%. Make sure you can cover the closing costs and then maybe put down 5% or even 10%. But you need to leave a cushion in your savings account that's going to cover you if you have potential things happen. I can tell you firsthand, when my husband and I bought this house in 2012, I had one child and one on the way. We had all these things that we were going to do to the house and hopes and dreams. And the first thing that happened, the very first summer that we were in the house, the AC quit. And it didn't just quit, it blew up in our faces. And we had to spend $9,500 to get that AC completely replaced. That was not in my thought process of what was going to happen. Thankfully, we did have it in savings, but that about wiped us out at that time. We were planning for a new kid. We were planning for renovations. That was not in our plan. So you need to make sure that you are saving for the unexpected. And if putting 20% down is going to completely drain you, it's not a good idea to drain your savings. It's just not. So this goes on to talk about research from the National Association of Realtors found that since 2018, the average down payment for a first-time home buyer has been between 6 and 7%. So it's not surprising a first-time home buyer, first-time home buyer isn't selling a home and using the proceeds to cover a significant part of a new one. So that's the thing. When you're buying your second, third, fourth, and so on house, chances are you're using the proceeds of the home that you just sold to finance and go towards the home that you're purchasing. Well, if you're a first-time home buyer, you don't have that leverage yet. Everything that you have is things that money that you've saved or gifts that maybe a parent has given you, to help you get started in life and help you make that first down payment, because that's what's then going to give you leverage to sell later on down the road and get into that second home that's maybe now your dream home, or that third home is going to be your dream home. So don't get carried away in thinking that you have to put down 20% on every home, especially if it's your first home. If you put down 5%, 10% to get into your first home and you're making those payments. Plus, the other thing that I try to tell people to think about is I really want you to think about, how long do you see yourself being in this home? If you are potentially buying this home as an investment property because you're going to have friends living with you for now, you're renting out rooms, or if you're like, hey, I'm single right now, maybe in the next couple of years, things are going to change. I'm going to get a promotion. My girlfriend and I might get engaged. We might have kids, right? Life changes are going to happen where I don't see myself probably living in this home more than like 3 to 5 years. Keeping that money in your pocket a lot of times is a safer play than putting it into the house, because you just don't know what's going to happen between now and then. If you might need that money. You might need to pull some of that out. Now, yes, you could pull some of it out in a home equity line of credit. A lot of people do that. But again, if you don't see yourself being in this home long term, you just see yourself being here the next 3 to 5 years, that 3 to 5 years, you're not going to be paying, up to the 20%, the 20% down payment that you've put in there. So it really just needs to be something that you look at, you talk with the lender, see what, if you put down 20%, is it still affordable for you? Or if you put down less than 20%, is it still affordable for you to purchase this home? Or is your monthly payment now too high and you're not able to afford it? If that's the case, then putting more money down might be a better incentive. However, the other thing to keep in mind is with the 20%, not getting the PMI on there. If you stay in this home for the next, say, 5 years, and right now home prices have been rising about 5% per year. I think in Georgia right now we're at 5.8%. So over the next 4 years, if we continue to rise at 5% each year, in 4 years, I could refinance. Maybe we'll have a better interest rate by that point. And my, equity has now put in that 20% for me. And when I refinance, I can get that private mortgage insurance off, and I didn't even have to put down more money because my equity paid it in for me. So I hope that made sense. And if you have any questions on that, definitely let me know. Let's look at a couple of questions. I can't wait to pay off my home. Betty Ayers, it's a good thing. It's something that everybody should be striving for. So it's a no-brainer, in my opinion. You're paying rent somewhere. Why not pay it to yourself and gain equity? I would agree 100%. That's not to say that sometimes renting isn't the best option. I definitely think that if you're moving to a new location, you're moving to a new town, you want to see what it's like. You want to see what the schools are like, see what the people are like, rent for a little while. Or if you know that you're just going to be here for a little bit, you're in and out because of work, because of jobs. Maybe you're a traveling nurse. We've had a lot of those here recently. Renting is the right thing to do, unless you plan on being an investor where you stay here for a little bit and then you're going to be renting it out later. Sometimes renting is the right thing, but most of the time, I would rather be paying my mortgage and paying towards something instead of renting for my entire life. My parents were all in on an active adult neighborhood, but saw the HOA fees and changed their mind. Anthony, isn't it crazy how much? And you have to think about that's on top of the mortgage that you're paying. So yes, you have these amazing amenities. And when I say amazing, I truly do mean amazing. I feel like I'm at the Ritz-Carlton. But that being said, the HOA fees sometimes are astronomical, and you're adding that onto a mortgage that is really high, or you're having to swallow the pill if you're buying it in cash from the proceeds of your other home, that you're letting go of a lot more space, you're letting go of a lot more land. So it has to be the right fit for you. I definitely tell everybody, look at both options. There's nothing wrong with going and looking at them. You might get some really great thoughts as far as how to decorate, because they are decorated to the hills. But you want to make sure that you're looking at all of your options, that it makes the best sense for you. Definitely good to have an emergency fund and then create a budget to make additional principal payments. So that was the next thing that I wanted to go over. Thank you, Anthony, for the transition. It's like you knew what I was going to say. With this being said, prepaying your mortgage, what is it and should you do it? So in my opinion, absolutely you should do it. And again, I feel like this is one of those things where people are like, oh, but I don't have the money to do a 15-year mortgage, or I don't have the money to just lump sum pay off my mortgage. No one's saying to do that. No one's saying to do that at all. So here are some of the things, key takeaways. When you prepay your mortgage, you pay extra toward the loan principal to help pay your loan off sooner and save money on interest. There are many ways to prepay a mortgage, including biweekly payments, periodic extra payments, or one lump sum. Now, most people don't get to the lump sum, and that's okay, because let me explain to you why. When you take out a mortgage, you're agreeing to pay it back years over, even sometimes even decades, but that doesn't mean that you can't pay it back sooner. One of the benefits of this is, look at this. So if your monthly payment is $2,600 a month over 30 years, your total interest, you guys, this is why I say when you're signing the paperwork, don't look at that last number, because it will make your heart hurt a little bit. $538,000 in interest alone. That's not even talking about what you paid to the principal. That's interest alone. But if you paid just one extra payment a year, just one, you're paying $2,600 extra one time. It takes you from 30 years to 24 years and takes that interest. You're saving over $100,000 by just making one extra payment. If you did just $100 extra monthly, it takes you down to 27 years and saves you goes down to $469,000. The total interest that you saved was $69,000. So if you can even do looking at bi-monthly payments, that is another factor that you have to look at, because bi-monthly payments can save you a drastic amount. And the question is, well, why don't more people do this? A lot of people don't really think about it. It's funny, but I do this with my car. When I bought my car years ago, I would always pay just a little bit extra each time. So I paid it off faster. I didn't have to pay as much in interest. And it was just something that I automatically did. A lot of people don't realize that they can do this with their home. They think that they're going to get a prepayment penalty. And in some cases, you might. That's definitely something that I would ask your lender upfront when you're talking to them. Because here's the thing. If you had the ability to do a 15-year mortgage, yeah, that's great. But now your payment a month is stuck at a higher price. What if you lost your job and you can't make that monthly payment anymore? What if having a lower monthly payment is just a better overall feel for you? That's fine. Take that 30-year, take the lower payment, because now you have the ability to make extra payments because you have that money that maybe you got a bonus, maybe you got a refund on your taxes, maybe you got a promotion, maybe you got a Christmas bonus. I don't know. But if you took that and instead of being like, woohoo, I can go shopping, take that and say, woohoo, I can put that down on my house this year and I make $100,000 back at the end of this. And I'm now only paying for 24 years compared to paying for 30 years. And I'm sorry, but if you tell me you don't have 2,000 extra dollars a year, I don't think you should be buying a house anyways. We're not ready, guys. We need to be saving a little bit more because 2,000 extra dollars a year is like Starbucks every week. So that's something that you should be doing. And to keep in mind, when you're making that extra payment, it goes directly toward the principal. So right now, when you make your mortgage payment, you're paying a little bit on the principal and a little bit towards the interest. A lot of times they're pretty even. Again, depending on your interest rate is going to be, how much interest you're paying. But sometimes it can really be a hard pill to swallow when you look at your monthly payment and you're like, okay, so $500 is going towards interest and $500 is going towards principal. I'm paying just as much in interest as I am in principal. So when you're paying that extra payment, whether it's bi-monthly or once a year, once a month, however you want to do it, that is going directly to your principal. It is not being put towards interest at all. So that is a huge thing when you're looking at the long-term benefits of making just one payment a year. So how to prepay one extra payment a year. You can change that and do bi-weekly payments. Then you can do additional payments at your discretion, or you can kind of do a recast where they look at how much you owe and then they say, okay, we're going to spread that out over the next however many years. So should you make an extra payment? Well, here's the pros. You save significant money on the interest long term. You pay your mortgage off sooner. You're building more equity in your home faster. And you're reducing your debt to income, or your DTI. You'll hear this from lenders all the time, which can make it easier to get other loans. So if it's something where you're wanting to be an investor, you're wanting to possibly buy other homes, or maybe you need to buy a car, any of that, you would be able to get a loan much easier because you have less debt to income. You're also getting rid of that private mortgage insurance if you didn't put the 20% down payment that we talked about just a few minutes ago. So what are the cons? Well, potentially less money for savings, investing, or other financial goals. So that's, again, you want to make sure that you've got a savings. Do not put all of your money toward a home. You do not want to be house poor. It also ties up money in the house where it's not easily accessible. Again, making sure you've got that savings. Then the possible prepayment penalty. This is something that I said, you guys have to make sure that you're asking your lender. Most lenders this day and age, if you're getting a loan as of now, you're not going to have those prepayment penalties. If you have a loan that you've had for quite some time, you might want to talk to your lender and say, hey, if I make an extra payment, am I going to have a prepayment penalty? Because you definitely don't want to incur those. And if they say yes, you need to talk to them about what can you do, or, they may say, yes, if you paid it off in full right now, you would have a prepayment penalty. However, if you just make one payment a quarter or one payment a year, you're not going to incur anything. So make sure that you're talking to your lender and knowing the facts of what your loan looks like and how you could benefit yourself and being able to pay that off a little bit quicker. So Carl, 2 thumbs up. This is good stuff. I'm learning. Good. That's our goal here. I'm glad that you're learning. And I hope that this is all really helpful to you guys. It's why we're here every Thursday. If you guys ever have questions or you see something online and you're like, hey, Ash, I'd really like to talk about this, email it over to me. I'm happy to make sure that we go live about it and we discuss it. I want to make sure that we are here to clarify and make sure that you know exactly what's going on, what's available to you, because I feel like it's not always just crystal clear. And there's a reason for that. Lenders want to make sure that they're getting paid. If you pay it off early, well, they just missed out on all of that interest. But that's not in your best interest. So I thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed it, learned a few things. If you have questions, reach out to me. My email is in the information below. And I'll see you guys next Thursday at 7 o'clock. Have a great night.